Jon Stewart is worth $120 million. He's an elite. He's one of the 1%. And it's in the best interest of wealthy white people to divide the country by race and say, oh, don't look at me. All white people are the same. All white people are out to get you. And here he's going to virtue signal, he's going to race bait, and he's going to preach black victimhood and white guilt. And here we go.
As you may know, this country has had some issues with race. Oh.
And what country hasn't? What country hasn't had an issue with race? Slavery was just in the Americas under the British colonies before this country even existed. Slavery started in South America 50 years before North America. It came to the British colonies from England. Europe adopted slavery from Islamic countries, from Arab countries, from Africa, from tribes enslaving other tribes. That's how it spread throughout the world. But these idiots want to talk about it like it's a United States invention and no other country has teeth in its history. Well, you know what? We do have teeth in our history. We also have a hell of a lot of progress. We also have amazing accomplishments like, I don't know, pushing the Nazis out of Africa and Europe, providing aid for war-torn nations, food, blankets, save countless people from starving or freezing to death. There's a lot of good things this country has done as well, and a lot of progress that you'll never hear these scumbags talk about.
Okay. Sphincters are tightening already. We've had some issues with race. There was that incident in 1619, and then had a few hiccups since then, but mostly it's been fine. We've all been chilling. It's been chill. Until a couple of years ago, another rare bad thing happened to black people in the summer of 2020.
George Floyd's death is sparking a national reckoning.
The death of George Floyd, it sparks this global movement, this racial reckoning.
We here in America certainly had our own racial reckoning in the wake of George Floyd's death.
A growing number of American companies facing a racial reckoning.
As America confronts a racial reckoning.
A racial reckoning.
It also comes at a time of racial reckoning for the country.
Oh. So you guys are finally ready to talk about racial
What happened to George Floyd was used by opportunists to divide this country by race and attack all police officers. Since this chauvinist scumbag with his knee on George Floyd's neck, this cop was a scumbag. Therefore, every single cop, we're over 800,000 cops, every single one of them is like that. Every single one of them is a scumbag. It was one incident. It was a horrible incident, but one incident, and it was exploited to divide this country. When you look at the actual numbers of unarmed black people that have been shot by white police officers, the numbers, it's not that many per year, and obviously every case needs to be investigated, but actually 2015 under Obama was a real bad year. You've seen that number actually gone down, but these people want to exploit it and make it sound like there's some kind of epidemic happening. And what did the attack on police do to the inner city communities where you see crime and murder skyrocketing, inner cities that have a large black population that are now suffering because of this?
Reckoning. We don't want to right the wrongs. I just reckon we're going to think about it for a bit. Well, not to worry. This egregious midday murder will not be in vain. Let the work of righting centuries of oppression begin.
Aunt Jemima is being retired.
And yeah, this was absolutely insane. Aunt Jemima brought smiles to millions of people for decades. Having her on the breakfast table, this beautiful smiling black woman, what a great association to have with black people, and something that made people smile. It brightened the day, and they took that away. Completely insane. And then did they do the same thing to Mr. Clean or food packaging that have white people on them. I mean, this was completely stupid.
By any means necessary.
Cream of wheat is removing the black chef from its packaging.
Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, has announced he is stepping away.
Every NFL stadium, you're going to see phrases like end racism.
Tonight we know the Dixie Chicks are dropping the Dixie.
The village of Hempstead renamed Main Street Black Lives Matter Way.
We will now kneel for our moment of silence.
Worst production of Lion King ever. But more than Kente cloth calisthenics and some long overdue brand readjustments, there came another, even more meaningful cultural shift.
I think white people need to listen.
White people should listen to African Americans.
White people, we need to listen.
Anybody that says white people is an arrogant prick. I mean, can you imagine being so arrogant to speak for an entire race? Which is exactly what Jon Stewart is doing here. Once again, a man who has a net worth of $120 million claiming to speak for white people. Anybody that utters those words, all white people, is a fraud and a moron. I can't imagine claiming to speak for every single person that had my skin tone. It is so elitist and arrogant to do. And that applies to any white person claiming to speak for all white people and any black person claiming to speak for all black people. It is so insulting.
Listening. I am listening. Now it's time for us to have ears to hear.
Oh, good, because I've been using mine for fucking. Two at a time. I like my ear fucking like I like my Pink Floyd albums in stereo. Yeah, we changed it from rehearsal for the crew that got a bit of a tickle out of that one. Yes, apparently this racial issue that so divides America could have just been solved if only black people would have said something. So, okay, white people, ears to hear.
This is the harsh reality for black people in America today, that we are expected to participate in democracy while receiving conditional citizenship in return.
When zip code determines what kind of school that you go to, when zip code determines what kind of food you can eat, these are the vestiges of enslavement.
So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything.
It's amazing.
That's where you live.
Why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back.
I mean, this stuff is hard to hear.
Well, let's talk about education. Let's talk about schools. Zip code determines what schools you go to. Why are the inner city schools such shit? Why are public schools, and by the way, I went to a public high school in Chicago, and my education was shit. So fuck public schools, fuck the corrupt piece of shit teachers unions. But who's running that? Who are the teachers unions a political arm for? It's all the Democratic Party. It's all the party that people like Jon Stewart support. So yeah, let's talk about shit education and the cause of shit education in inner cities.
But these are tough conversations, and I would probably have more hope in its impact on our culture if those same exact sentiments hadn't already been conveyed to white people over and over and over, like 1 year earlier on The Breakfast Club.
They never addressed the primary problems of black folk. Our primary problem was not social integration or civil rights. The primary problem is you never corrected the legacies and burdens of slavery.
Or by Viola Davis at an award show in 2015.
The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity.
Or in the 90s, when Sister Souljah explained this directly to Bill Clinton and Larry King.
The thing that kills African people in America is not what white people say, but what they do, their policies, their actions.
See, white people are pretending that this problem is new, and we're just hearing about it now because we...
What white people are you talking about? Let's be real. There's plenty, when you look at the working class, there's plenty of diversity. When you look at the elites, that's where diversity is lacking. When you look at the 1%, that's where diversity is lacking. And that's where Jon Stewart is, worth over $120 million. So that's where the problem is. But you'll never hear him talk about that. He'll never talk about wealth and equality. Like I said, all white people, paint them the same. And black people, all the white people are out to get you.
We love to discover stuff that's already existed.
And plus, so what? Oh, look at this one person on the Breakfast Club that I never heard of and really don't give a shit about. Look at this other person. Look at there's a lot of black conservatives out there too. You gonna play their clips, John?
It's kind of our thing. America! Where did you come from? First. As a matter of fact, this shit has been said many times just by Chris Rock.
Shit, there ain't a white man in this room that would change places with me. And I'm rich. You had a 400-year head start, motherfucker. See, the black man gotta fly to get something that the white man could walk to. A black C-student can't even be the manager of Burger King. Meanwhile, a white C-student just happens to be the president of the United States of America.
He's a very good comedian.
He's an awesome comedian. I'm a huge Chris Rock fan. But let's go back to what he said, right? I mean, every person, no matter how smart they are, says something really stupid. Chris Rock said, white people wouldn't be me, and I'm rich. Chris Rock obviously has millions of dollars. So when he says white people wouldn't be me, he's talking about being black. So, okay, all right, let's lay it out and think about this. You're saying a white person wouldn't be black for $1 million. Is that what you're saying? Imagine in every town, in every city, there is this machine that white people can go into and get the reverse Michael Jackson treatment. They go in white, they come out, their skin's dark, and at the end of that, they get $1 million. Now you're saying nobody would be in line? Everybody, even rich white people would be in line. Are you kidding me? I mean, think about it. Make sure you always think about things. Don't be an idiot like Jon Stewart, who doesn't even think about things, or he's worth $120 million. He has no idea what most of the lives or perceptions of most of the people in his country are, that he's just repeating that ridiculous statement by Chris Rock. Imagine that. Imagine if there are a place white people can go to, they go in a machine, they come out with dark skin, they get $1 million. Sign me up. I'm going to be in that line. There won't be any white people if you do that. The lines to those machines will be longer than the lines of people fleeing Ukraine. Okay? I mean, think about it. Let's get real. Dark skin? I get $1 million? Sign me up. If that's really what Chris Rock thinks, then he's become out of touch.
But you know what? Maybe you don't want to hear about our racial divide and have it be funny. Would you rather black people invent an entire genre of music just to explain it to us?
Fathers of his country never cared for me. They kept my ancestors shackled up in slavery. And Uncle Sam never did a damn thing for me. Except lie about the facts in my history.
But you know what? It's wonderful that white people are finally ready to sit back and listen. But damn, the black people speaking out now are just sampling the classics.
Racism is so deeply embedded into the fabric of the society.
Thank you, Angela. James Baldwin went all the way to England to explain it because he wanted to do it at white people headquarters.
It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace, and to which you owe your life and your identity, has not in its whole system of reality evolved any place for you.
For fuck's sake, Frederick Douglass told white people the rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. He said that in 1852. And now, 170 years later, suddenly we're like, hey, you seem upset. We're still cool though, right?
Yeah, those stupid looks and those pauses have just been funny for decades, and it still are. Jon Stewart's such a comedic genius. So he's bringing up Frederick Douglass, who was a character of the Civil War. He met with Lincoln, the Civil War. And when you talk about reckoning, the Civil War, white people killing a whole bunch of white people, a lot of white suffering. The Civil War was over slavery. Don't let anybody ever tell you different. There's people that'll say, oh no, Civil War is about state rights. Okay, state rights regarding what? State rights regarding slavery. So that's the great reckoning this country had. And he's saying 170 years ago, like no progress has been made 170 years ago. He's bringing up James Baldwin. He's bringing up black and white historical conversations and debates. So no progress has been made over the last 50 years. Well, here's a couple of younger black people, and here's their perspective to counter Jon Stewart's.
Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did, and it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You utilize their history, and you come in here with more emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. More emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. It's embarrassing. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans. It's what's going on right now.
I'm telling you right now, don't come up to me and tell me you feel sorry for me. I don't need your sympathy. Don't come up to me and try to reason with me and say you have sympathy for me or you're showing empathy towards me because my ancestors were slaves. Well, look, let me tell you this. I had no association. I have no association with slavery. I wasn't even alive during the civil rights movement. I have only been alive when black and white people can go to school together. Since I've been alive, black and white people play football together. Black and white people shop together. They live together. They marry each other. Since I've been alive, black and white people in America don't have issues. Don't have huge issues. Now, when you look at isolated situations, yeah, man, it's never going to happen. Inevitably, people are going to be crazy. People are going to hate each other. People are going to not like other people because of their race, the color, the color of their hair, their eyes. If they didn't get a manicure, pedicure today, people are going to be mad at you. There's a full spectrum of hatred that comes along with being human beings. But does that mean that we live in the 50s? Does that mean that we live in the 40s? Does that mean that we live, 500 years ago? It doesn't mean that.
Did we do something? Black people have given us step-by-step instructions through the centuries. They didn't even do that with the electric slide. Which, by the way, 3 steps and then you bend. I don't want to get into it. And yet, even after all that, the wealth gap, worse now. Home ownership, worse now. Segregation, worse now. On average, a white high school graduate is wealthier than a black college graduate. Forget about
this is dishonest, because he's incorporating all the white billionaires, all the white people himself. He's incorporating where diversity is really lacking with the elites. The 1% of this country owns 50% of the country, the top 1%. And that's what's skewing the numbers. And what do I have in common? What kind of commonality do I have with a white billionaire? None. He's comparing the white billionaires and the white trailer parkers, saying they're the same, and oh, black people, they're all out to get you. What a bunch of crap. I mean, let's take every white person with wealth over $100 million and give all that money to black people, so that for wealth over $100 million, there are no white people. There are only black people that have over $100 million. How would that affect my life one bit? Why would I even care? I have no relationship. I have no connection with people with that much money at all. I don't care. And this is what's skewing the numbers, but he's not going to talk about that. He's going to carry water for the elites and continuing with dividing our country by race. And all this hyper-focus on race came after the Occupy Wall Street movement. This is orchestrated, and he's carrying their water. This is pathetic.
About them telling you even the stark facts don't seem to matter.
Black Americans should understand that if they study and work hard, they will likely succeed in this country.
Just not as much as white people.
Yes, they will. If they're working class, they will. But in order to be an elite and be a billionaire or have over $100 million, then yeah, that's the area where the diversity is lacking. But for the vast majority of Americans, and how about the millions of black people that did what Bill O'Reilly said and are successful? I mean, people like Jon Stewart act like every single black person's living in a ghetto. What about all the successful black people in this country who worked hard, who showed up on time, who had initiative, who got themselves educated, got themselves a skill, worked hard, became successful? What about all of them? And what's the better message to uplift the black community? Bill O'Reilly, hey, if you work hard, you can succeed. Is that message better? Or is the message better coming from people like Jon Stewart? Oh, this country's racist and you'll just never amount to anything. And forget about Bill O'Reilly. Here's somebody else that used to preach this personal responsibility. And by the way, when you look at the comedy of Chris Rock, a lot of his comedy is about personal responsibility for black people. You look at his sketch, Black People versus the N-Word, or How Not to Get Your Ass Kicked by the Police. A lot of his comedy dealt with personal responsibility. But here's Don Lemon before he sold his soul to leftism. Check out this clip.
Someone on another network got the chance to go first because I couldn't go during the week. I'm only here on the weekend, so listen to this.
The reason there is so much violence and chaos in the black precincts is the disintegration of the African-American family.
He's got a point. In fact, he's got more than a point. Bill?
Raised without much structure, young black men often reject education and gravitate towards the street culture, drugs, hustling, gangs. Nobody forces them to do that. Again, it is a personal decision.
He is right about that too. But in my estimation, he doesn't go far enough. Because black people, if you really want to fix the problem, here's just 5 things that you should think about doing. Here's number 5. And if this doesn't apply to you, if you're not doing this, then it doesn't apply to you. I'm not talking about you. Here's number 5. Pull up your pants. Some people, a lot of them black, gave me flack for saying that recently on the Wendy Williams show. If you're sagging, it means, I think it's your self-esteem is sagging and who you are as a person, it's sagging. Young people need to be taught respect, and there are rules. sagging pants, whether it's Justin Bieber or no-name Derek around the way, walking around with your ass and your underwear showing is not okay. In fact, it comes from prison when they take away belts from the prisoner so that they can't make a weapon. And then it evolved into which role a prisoner would have during male-on-male prison sex. The one with the really low pants is a submissive one. You get my point? Number 4 now is the N-word.
For our generation, what we did was we took the word and we took the power out of that word.
We took this word and we made it into poetry.
I understand poetic license, but consider this. I hosted a special on the N-word, suggesting that black people stop using it, and that entertainers stop deluding yourselves or themselves and others that you're somehow taking the word back. By promoting the use of that word when it's not germane to the conversation, have you ever considered that you may just be perpetuating the stereotype the masser intended, acting like a nigger? A lot of African Americans took offense to that too, and I wondered if I gave the right advice. I really did. But confirmation came the very next day on my way home when I exited the subway on 125th Street in Harlem. This little kid in a school uniform, no older than 7 years old, he was crying his eyes out as he walked down the sidewalk with his mother. I'm going to be honest here. She turned to him and she said, "I'm sick of you. You act like an old-ass man. Stop all that crying, nigger." Is that taking the word back? Think about that. Now, number 3, respect where you live. Start small by not dropping trash, littering in your own communities. I've lived in several predominantly white neighborhoods in my life. I rarely, if ever, witness people littering. I live in Harlem now. It's an historically black neighborhood. Every single day I see adults and children dropping their trash on the ground when a garbage can is just feet away. Just being honest here. Number 2, finish school. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Stop telling kids are acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. A high school dropout makes on average $19,000 a year. A high school graduate makes $28,000 a year. A college graduate makes $51,000 a year. Over the course of a career, a college grad will make nearly $1 million more than a high school graduate. That's a lot of money. And number 1, and probably the most important, just because you can have a baby, it doesn't mean you should, especially without planning for one or getting married first. More than 72% of children in the African American community are born out of wedlock. That means absent fathers. And the studies show that lack of a male role model is an express train right to prison. And the cycle continues. So please, black folks, as I said, if this doesn't apply to you, I'm not talking to you. Pay attention to and think about what has been presented in recent history as acceptable behavior. Pay close attention to the hip-hop and rap culture that many of you embrace, a culture that glorifies everything I just mentioned, thug and reprehensible behavior, a culture that is making a lot of people rich, just not you, and it's not going to.
Who don't study as hard. We have been told over and over and over again by black people that this country has never resolved the original sins of slavery and segregation. But the response to that is always...
What black people?
If Barack Obama can make it...
Not all black people are obsessed with segregation and slavery. I'm in my 50s. I grew up in Chicago. I never experienced segregation. When I went to high school, a public high school in Chicago in the 80s, my lunch table had black, Hispanic, Asian, white. We played softball after school. We weren't obsessed with segregation and slavery because that crap was so long ago. Now it's 40 years after the 80s. Give me a break. Who do you think is so obsessed with this crap?
As the son of a single white mom, then so can everybody.
It is the leftists that are driving the obsession. White leftists, elitists, purposely dividing this country by race. They're the one injecting all this crap into the minds of people. They're the ones pushing all this division, getting people to obsess with this crap that happened way before they were born.
Oprah Winfrey is perhaps the best example of a talented person who made it on our own in America.
LeBron James is a great American success story.
How can America be racist if Cleveland has a championship?
But notice he didn't address Oprah Winfrey, who's a billionaire that skyrocketed in the 80s and has an amazing success story. And Barack Obama, who was elected twice to the greatest position of power in the country. He doesn't talk about that. He talks about LeBron James. Well, yeah, I agree, LeBron James, so what? But you know what? Let's talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson. How Einstein used to be associated with intelligence. Today, Neil deGrasse Tyson, when people think of somebody who's smart, when they think about intelligence, they think Neil deGrasse Tyson, a black man. How about that story?
It doesn't seem to matter what black people tell us or how many times they say it. It lands on deaf ears because a large swath of white America believes that black Americans are solely responsible for their community struggle. And the bias is so pervasive, we don't even notice it.
Crack. Who's responsible? Let me tell you straight out. Everyone who uses drugs.
And perchance, who would this everyone be?
Crack has become the new franchise, a chemical McDonald's. You want to get high, you see the guys in the gangs, in the red and blue outfits.
The front line in the war on crack.
There are tens of thousands more crack babies on the way.
Crack babies are going to overwhelm every social service delivery system.
Before, we could afford to ignore the hopelessness represented by gangs, but now we're afraid it will affect our schools, our kids, our streets.
It's as innocent looking as candy, but it's turning our cities into battle zones, and it's murdering our children.
What kind of fucking candy do you eat? Now, this is not to downplay at all the effects of the crack epidemic, but we are currently in the midst of an equally corrosive opioid epidemic, although that affects a slightly different everyone. And how is that portrayed?
America's addiction to opioids is playing out right down the street. Every type of person you can imagine. Successful people, funny people, moms, dads, grandparents, injured athletes, cancer patients, war veterans. Chances are greater than ever you know someone directly affected. Why are opioids so hard to quit?
Well, that's fucking easy. It links opioid receptors and inhibits an enzyme that I'm not going to get into it right now. But the point is, it's on purpose. And the people who made it that way only had to pay a fine. But that's drugs. I'm sure poverty doesn't have the same empathy gap.
Let's talk about drugs. Now Jon Stewart has actually provided a concrete example where there was racism. There was racism because the jail sentences for crack were higher than cocaine. Now, cocaine is more of a rich person's drug. Crack is more of a poor person's drug. So that's disproportionately affected poor people, disproportionately affected blacks in inner cities. So the drug war has been, you can point to examples where that has been racist.
City is a polite name for ghetto, as in black ghetto.
And that's the award-winning PBS journalist. Just out of curiosity, why is the black ghetto poor?
Intelligent Americans know it is the collapse of the traditional family that is wreaking havoc in the African American community.
72% of black babies are born to single mothers.
If they would start talking about the responsibilities of fatherhood.
Dependency on welfare was breaking up black families.
The breakdown of the black family and an extraordinarily dysfunctional, toxic inner city culture.
Inner city? Excuse me. The politically correct phrase is black ghetto. Good day.
So is Jon Stewart arguing that that's not an issue with single mothers raising kids? And when you talk about struggles of the black, when you look at the black community as a whole, when you look at that demographic, there's a big difference between black women and black men. Black women represent the most educated demographic in this country. And it seems to be there's a different expectations, and that's not only happening with black people, that's happening with white people as well. Women are succeeding more than men are. But isn't that an issue? Single mothers raising kids, and wouldn't that be a lot better if you had both parents in the household? Wouldn't that be a lot better? Isn't that a big part of the problem? But he doesn't even say that. He just shows people talking about the issue, and it is a major issue, and then just kind of blowing it off.
By the way, how do we portray poverty in the outer city?
Ruggedly beautiful and deeply poor Appalachia for decades has struggled.
People here have struggled more and more as their factories have shuttered and their coal mines have closed.
It's been a slow, painful drip of job losses for decades.
It used to be with a high school degree, you could get a job that actually could provide for your family. Yeah. And the disappearance of those may lead people to feel a lot more stressed.
So that low self-worth, along with that hopelessness feeling, we start seeing tremendous depression. So how do you relieve depression? You can relieve it with drug use, alcohol use.
White people are poor and do drugs because something has been done to them. Black people are poor and do drugs because they won't just get up and do something.
No. They're talking about opportunity. Industry left these towns, and with the industry went the jobs, went the opportunity. So now people aren't working. They're not supporting themselves and their family. That's what we're talking about here, opportunity. So what are people like Jon Stewart doing to bring opportunity into inner cities? What's the Democrat Party doing to bring opportunity to inner cities? How does a shit education help people in inner cities? The failing public schools, the corrupt piece of shit teachers unions. How is that helping them? Constantly lowering the standards of education. How is that helping with opportunity in the inner cities? And all these things people like Jon Stewart supports, the Democrat Party, the teachers unions, public schools. How is that helping? What happened if you say you had a school choice? What happened if you gave black mothers vouchers where they can select better schools for their kids and their kids got a better education? What would happen for opportunity? Wouldn't opportunity go up? What about investments in inner cities? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about opportunity. Nothing was done to those communities. The industry moves out. I mean, you can say something was done when we outsourced all our jobs to China. You can talk about that, but that affected a lot of people, not just white people. When you look at Detroit, there's plenty of inner cities that got destroyed when industry moved out. So that's a real issue. That's something tangible that affected everybody. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between having opportunity and not having opportunity and how we can make it so there's more opportunity.
Everything that happens is viewed through that filter.
What started as peaceful protest devolving into something beyond that.
An explosion of violence today.
This is not what we want people to see of the city of Philadelphia.
Well, makes perfect sense. How would you like people to see the city of Philadelphia?
The Eagles' victory touched off a wild celebration in Philadelphia.
The celebration quickly got rowdy. Fans pulled down traffic lights.
The awning in front of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel collapsed.
Started fires and tipped over cars.
Well, it looks like everybody had a good time there last night.
Okay, should we talk about peaceful protests while buildings are burning in the background? I mean, if we want to talk about dishonest or biased media, okay, let's have that conversation.
And thus, the problem with white people.
Fuck you, Jon Stewart. elitist prick claiming to speak for all white people.
I was going to stop for a second and pose so you can get your memes out. Okay, there we go. Get a good picture for your clickbaits. For however sincerely we want to reckon and listen, the truth is America has always prioritized white comfort over black survival. Black people have had to fight so hard for equality that they've been irreparably set back in the pursuit of equity. And any real attempt to repair a ton of that damage, reparation, sets off white people's "they're coming for our shit" alarm, which we would know ourselves had we actually been listening.
My feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem, and they should start thinking about what they can do about it. Take me out of it.
Understood.
All right, so Jon Stewart just says reparations. Oh, well, thank you, Jon Stewart. You just solved everybody's problems. Who gets it? Where does it come from? Most black people in this country don't have ancestors that were slaves. Most of them, their parents, their grandparents migrated to this country after slavery ended. Most white people do not have ancestors that were slave owners. President Barack Obama did not have ancestors that were slaves. So where does the money come from? Where does it go to? He doesn't talk about that. Now, like I said, are you going to take money from white trailer parkers, single mothers, penniless, raising their kids in a trailer park? Are you going to take money from them? Where's the money going to come from? Now, if we say we're going to have a maximum wealth in this country, and everybody, the maximum wealth you can have is $100 million, and every dollar over that is going to go into opportunity into inner cities, which will help all poor people, not just blacks, but since there's a large black population in inner cities, it will disproportionately help them more. So how about that? How about we have a maximum wealth, and $100 million is the most wealth you can have. Every penny over that will go to support inner cities, support better schools, support industry, support training for what we need. I mean, we need water. We need piping. We need plumbing. We need water treatment plants. We need sewers. We need electricity. We need transportation. We need food. All these industries that have specific skills and involved with them. How about having massive training for those skills? How about training more people to be able to go in and do remodeling on a home? How about more people in construction? How about all our bridges that need to be maintained, that need to be repaired? How about we really put an effort and really put an investment in inner cities for these trainings to provide that opportunity, because that's what it's about. So how about that? How about that as a solution? $100 million maximum wealth. Now, you won't hear anything like that. And in fact, this whole division of race is to stop people from talking that way. Stop focusing on the top 1% of the 1%. But you know what? Let's have that conversation. And as far as uplifting black people, it seems to me that black women have a whole lot of expectations. Black women are expected to have that higher education. They're expected to graduate college. They're expected to have a career. They're expected, when they have children, to be there and with those kids and raise those children. What if black men had the same expectations as black women? Seems to me black people would be kicking everybody's ass. So how about that? And how about school choice? Give some competition to these piece of shit public schools and the scumbag, corrupt shit teachers unions that don't give a damn, that keep lowering the standards of kids' education And the Democrats that want black people uneducated and stupid, so every election they'll keep voting Democrat. They'll be dumb enough to keep voting Democrat. How about that? How about school choice? How about vouchers? You do those two things, you'll do far more to uplift the black community than anything this empty-headed Jon Stewart said, just saying the word reparations, without anything behind it. Devil's in the details. Anyway, that's my rant, and let's end this with Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about what he's done as far as more visibility to black people as intellectuals and taking on that stereotype when he started in television appearances in the 80s.
Now, Neil, you make it sound like at age 9, you had this vision of yourself as an astrophysicist, and you sort of marched very steadily towards that goal. But there must have been some time. Tell me about the time, the toughest time you had on this pathway when you almost went and did something else, and what kept you on track?
Well, I still can't say that I almost did something else. You know, astrophysics is not the first subject you think of to put food on somebody's plate or to somehow improve the situation of the underprivileged in the world. It's just not the first profession that you think of. So my parents, my father was active in the civil rights movement. My mother was a housewife at the time, a very common profession of the day, and later on went back to school, became a gerontologist. So here I have parents who are helping people, and here's their son, you know, studying black holes, right?
Looking up at the sky.
Yeah, and so it's a little weird, but they were supportive of this. And, all right, but I still had some discomfort about whether I was doing the right thing culturally. Mm-hmm. I knew I was doing the right thing personally, but you want to make a difference in the world. If you don't want to make a difference in the world, go move to another planet. I mean, why? What are you here for? You know, why?
Just don't move to Pluto.
That's right.
That wouldn't count. But.
And so, meanwhile, all right, I go to high school and I take extra science classes and extra math classes and advanced calculus and all this stuff. And I go to college. And I was athletic in high school and college. I wrestled, by the way. I wrestled in the weight category at the time, 190 pounds. 190. Now, that's a key weight category of all of them. There are 10 weight categories. Why? Because if you show up 192 pounds, you then get classified in a weight category called unlimited. Okay? So there's really good incentive to hit that weight. So there was another guy on the team who was my weight. We were the same weight. He was a senior, talented fellow, majoring in economics. In fact, he became a Rhodes Scholar during the year. And we're coming out, had a nice, good workout. We're coming out, and he said, Neil, how's it going? I'm a freshman. How's it going? I said, oh, all my problem sets are kicking my butt. I barely have time to go to the bathroom. And he said, well, what was it you're majoring in again? I said, oh, physics. And he says, well, and you want to do what with it? I said, I want to get a PhD in astrophysics. And you know what he said to me? By the way, what was he going to do with his Rhodes Fellowship at Oxford? He was going to explore the role of enterprise zones in inner city neighborhoods to empower those who are economically disenfranchised. Okay. He's black, by the way. So he turns to me and said, astrophysics. Then he says the following: the black community cannot afford the luxury of someone with your intellect to spend it on that subject. And I was devastated by that comment. Devastated. Now, he wasn't just anybody saying it. This is somebody who was walking the walk and talking the talk. And so I had no way out of that. He dug a hole and put me in the hole. And I had no shovel, no ladder, no way, and there I was in a hole. trying to think my way out of it. And I knew my interest in the universe was real because I felt it in my heart. I felt it coursing through my veins. But my responsibility as an educated member of society was eating away at that ambition. In the absence of another way to think about the problem, I just kept at it, but with this albatross around my neck, this guilt that maybe I wasn't doing all I could to help others. All right. It's 1989. I'm in graduate school in New York City, Columbia University, Upper West Side. A phone call comes into the department from Fox News. This is before Fox was a national network. It was just local Fox News. The weather guy had read over the newswire that there was an explosion on the sun. Okay? A blob of plasma, astrophysical plasma, which is just a gas with a lot of ionized particles in it. So it actually responds to magnetic fields. It's kind of a cool state, sometimes called the fourth state of matter. And the guy said, you know, there's this explosion on the sun. What can you tell us about it? I said, oh, it's just a blob of plasma, highly charged particles moving fast.
About 100 times the size of the Earth.
Yeah, it's large. It's a big plasma pie headed towards Earth. As it gets closer, these charged particles will notice the magnetic field of the Earth. They will split positive and negative. They will be attracted to the poles. They will spiral down, collide with the molecules in Earth's atmosphere, excite them and render them aglow, creating the northern lights, or the aurora borealis. So tomorrow and over the weekend, why don't you go north and have a good look at it? He said, you mean Earth is okay? I said, Earth is fine. They said, can you say that on the air? And I said, okay. And they said, we'll send up a limo. And I said, limo on the air? And I'm like, I'm a graduate student, all right? I'm wearing my one shirt and I got BO and I'm not, you know. So I said, could you send the limo to my house, okay? To my apartment and meet me there, not at the office. So I like run home, shower, put on my one tie, my one, you know, shirt, my one jacket, go to the interview, would sit in here like this, a little backdrop of books, kind of the erudite set. Anyway, so we do the interview, and it's fine. We record taped at 3 in the afternoon. So I go home, call everybody. Mom, dad, sis, brother, grandma, grandpa. So I'm gonna be on TV. Tune in. This is my first time on TV. So I'm home eating dinner, okay? And the interview comes on. There it is. So there it is. And at the end, I had an epiphany. A revelation. You ready? Yeah. This is 1989. I had never before in my life, and I believe to this day that that was the first such occasion, ever, but I had never before in my life seen an interview with a black person on television for expertise that had nothing to do with being black. Holding aside, of course, interviews with performers and musicians or athletes, right? I'm talking about experts.
An intellectual.
Intellectual.
Subject.
I had never seen a black person. The guy didn't ask me, well, how do black people feel about this plasma coming from the sun? What does your community feel about this? Will it harm your skin the way it will harm ours? That's not the conversation that unfolded. I was telling him whether Earth would survive. And at that point I realized that one of the last stereotypes that prevailed among people who carry stereotypes is that black people are somehow dumb. There used to be the stereotype that blacks were like physically unable, right? You know, shiftless and lazy. And then Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics sets 4 world records within 45 minutes in front of Hitler, right? The Aryan race. So that kind of fixed that one, right? We got that one done. You know, no one is saying blacks don't have physical ability. That one's done, okay? So when you combine this I wondered, maybe, if there's more of this, that's a way to undermine the sort of the stereotype that prevailed about who's smart and who's dumb. And think about it. The word smart is not applied to all professions, even if you are smart in that profession. No one talks about smart lawyers. They might say a brilliant lawyer. They'll talk about a creative artist. Smart is saved for scientists. It just is. It's not even really applied to medical doctors. It applies to scientists in the lab figuring stuff out that hadn't been figured out before. So if you had visible examples of this, then whatever is your next encounter with the black person trying to squeegee your windshield at the red light, and if you're prone to saying, oh, these black people, they don't work and they're too dumb, you're going to have to remember that I just told you that Earth is safe from the plasma that came from the sun. And so you're going to have to reconcile this. You're going to have to be wondering, well, maybe this guy could have been one of those. But for lack of opportunity, but for lack of institutions with foresight, okay?
And Neil, at this point, you had the answer to your Rhodes Scholar.
Thank you! I said to myself, I just have to be visible, or others like me, in that situation. That would have a greater force on society than anything else I could imagine. Anything else. And so to this day, I'm getting email from white people saying they wish they were as smart as I was. That was an unthinkable thing 30 years ago. That just would not have ever happened. White people wishing they were smart like black people. And so, then I said to myself, it's not that the black community can't afford to have me do astrophysics. It can't afford me to not do astrophysics. And at that point, I found myself standing outside the hole. I had climbed out, just the act of observing that interview. And since then, there have been other interviews with intellectuals of minority groups that have nothing to do with their being a minority. But I think that might have been the first ever. And I'll tell you why I think it was the first. Not that I've seen every single broadcast up until that minute of every channel, but it was another 5 years before I saw it happen again. Mm-hmm. That's why I think it was a blip. And then you're looking. Yeah. It's like you buy a new car and everybody somehow has your car that you're driving. Because but how did that happen? Well, you're now looking for it. So I was looking for it, and it went another 5 years. So I'm out of the hole. So then I said, well, let me look up my guy, see what he's doing. I can't find him anywhere on the internet. I don't know where he is. So I think I made the right decision.